And the music you hear in the background, it's called I Wish You Enough. This song has been created and recorded by Jeff Brisbane, a very good friend of mine. I wish you enough. And welcome to Avoid the Maze. Today, my guest is Karin Tyden. And Karin lives in Sweden. And prior to coming online today, we were sort of catching up on what it's like living in Sweden and the fact that there's a time period when there's only 4 hours of lightness during the day. And I complain that we only have maybe 7 hours here in the United States. But things are starting to brighten up. It's starting to become spring and summer. The sun is coming up. But life has a way of throwing us curveballs. We never really live our day exactly the way we plan it. And I think Karin is going to share that in a second. We get up in the morning, we know exactly what we're going to do. And maybe we do that and maybe we don't. Life can be messy, but there's a way to get through it. Karin, I read something that you wrote. You said you felt powerless and worthless from a very young age. And I think many people who are listening to this can relate to that. So welcome to Avoid the Maze, and tell us a little bit about that statement and where you come from and where you think you're going.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for having me. And it's true. I felt worthless and powerless for so many years. And like for most of us, it started in childhood. So powerless, I felt because I couldn't change the circumstances around me. And that is a lot of children that feels the same, that we are powerless. We can't change if our parents decide to get a divorce or to move or something else happens. We have very little power to do something about it.
Sure.
And that can actually give birth to a helplessness that we can feel even as an adult. So even if we are an adult and we have the resources, we have the knowledge, we still have left that feeling within us that it's hopeless or I don't have any power. So that triggered me to try to find out how come we have this feeling of powerlessness, even though we actually have the resources as a grown-up.
Sure.
And worthless, it's kind of a sibling to powerlessness. Because I felt when I was a child that I wasn't treated well. My father was a narcissist and my mother was very emotionally closed off. And they were also very religious and they were also quite dysfunctional together. So it created a very toxic environment and I was a very sensitive child. So I felt that a lot of grown-ups, they didn't listen to me, they didn't see me, and they kind of used me in the way they wanted. They wanted to me do stuff, they never asked me, and they punished me. And I remember just, small little things. Some things have been harder in life. Some things from childhood is just small things. I remember that every time when my mother thought I misbehaved, she said, "You wait until dad comes home." So, and that created a very strong anxiety in me.
Sure.
That just, waiting for hours for him to come home. And I didn't know what the punishment would be because it depended on his mood. So if he had a good day, he would just say, "Don't do it again." If he didn't have a good day, he would beat me. So it was always that anxiety of what's going to happen, and the
Sure.
powerlessness that I can't control this. I can't tell him no. And I noticed that when I become an adult and I started to work, that these kind of patterns repeated themselves. And also that I had developed strategies to not be beaten, to not feel powerless, at least for a little while. So what I did that, like I decided on some unconscious level that I was never going to be other than perfect. I'm not going to make any mistakes, because if I don't do any mistakes, I will not be punished, and I don't have to feel anxiety of
Sure.
some kind of punishment. And I started to work, and for some employers, that was really, really good, because they said that, oh, Karin, she's so good. She's doing everything perfectly on the dot, in time. She's very dependable. And I worked and I worked. I never made a mistake, or if I did, I correct them really fast.
Sure.
So the good thing was that I made a career just because I was dependable and I did a quality work. But on the other hand, was that I almost burned out myself. I tried to be so perfect. And the other side, what that also wasn't that good, was that I could lie about it. So if I made a mistake, I lied and say, no, it wasn't me, or I blamed someone or something, because I didn't dare to own up to my mistakes. And, after a while, that doesn't work anymore. So I had to start to working on myself to connect and to feel that I have power as a grown-up in my life. And also that I'm worthy, that even though people don't treat me with respect, it doesn't mean that I'm not worthy. But we often get unfortunately, very, very affected what happens in the childhood, because we're a little bit like clay. We are quite soft as children. So our parents' behaviors and the adults' behavior, and sometimes in school with our friends, they mold us into believe, what kind of strategies do I need to have in order to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel connected, to feel that I belong. And of course, we all try to belong, me as well. And we try to avoid punishment, and we try to feel safe.
Right.
And we often make up a lot of strategies that worked when we were little. But today, those kind of strategies can be instead of something that's stopping us. So if you were, I learned to be very quiet when I was a child, because if I was quiet, nobody notices me. I could get away with things, or they didn't notice me, so they didn't punish me. I could feel safe. But, I kept a strategy as a grown-up. And in some situation, that wasn't good to be quiet, because I never spoke up. I didn't say, this is not okay for me, or I don't want to do this, or this is too much, or this doesn't feel good. So that old strategies that kind of protected me when I was a kid now worked against me. And then I noticed that I had to really find out how to change that strategy. So that's where my new road started, like 25 years ago.
Well, life is forever evolving. And if we don't go with that flow, we can harm ourselves. And I'm not necessarily saying, to the point of physically hurting ourselves, but we can mentally harm ourselves. I was relating to something that you were saying. I don't remember my mother saying, wait till your father gets home. But I do remember as a very young child, when my father came home from work, if he didn't have a smile on his face, I automatically assumed he was mad at me. Now, I had two older brothers, okay? There was a lot going on in our family. So it wasn't like I was the only person who could upset him. But in my brain, that's what I thought. And if he walked in not smiling, I would start crying because I automatically assumed he's going to get mad at me. So now I gave him a reason to be mad at me, because here is this kid almost having a crying tantrum because daddy's not smiling. And my parents never really addressed that in me. But again, I eventually, as I got older, started to develop a strategy, like you said, not to assume. Okay.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, my parents were not big on punishment. I mean, if you did something really bad, yeah, you got punished. But
Yeah.
so I want our listeners to understand, sometimes we create these things for ourselves, and sometimes they are created by the sources, like you said. Your father, if he was in a good mood, it was, honey, don't do that again. If he was in a bad mood, you didn't know where it was going to come from. So you said for the last 24 years, you started making this change. Did something trigger it for you that you said, today's the day I got to make a change?
Yeah, it actually was. I was about 35 years old and I was working within television. So I was a TV producer and I had a really good job. I had a very nice partner, boyfriend, and my life was really where I wanted it to be. And I started to feel what I didn't know at the time, but I know now. I started to feel depressed. And I didn't even know that I was depressed because I felt like I was in a bad mood. I was irritable, a little bit low on energy. And then one day I read an article about depression. And I don't even know why I read it. Maybe the universe pointed at it. So I read it and I said, oh my God, this is me. I'm depressed. And that was a big revelation for me because I have never heard about depression before and I've never worked on myself. And I had no idea that, all these kind of old things that happened to me as a child could come back as a boomerang.
Right.
So I thought that, okay, I must work with this. So I told my boyfriend at the time, and I said to him that, well, I'm going to do this journey with myself. I need to look more inward and find out why I'm feeling like this, because I have everything that I want, but I'm still not happy. So what's the problem? And I said to him that either you follow me on the journey or we have to split here. And unfortunately, we split. So I started to work on myself, and that was the beginning of my journey to really start to see, why am I depressed? I didn't understand. I didn't have a clue why.
And a lot of times we really don't until we start either digging deep or we decide to start making some changes. And then we can see either those changes are helping us or they're not helping us. About 10 years ago, I went through something similar. I was working in corporate America. I loved my job, loved exactly what I had to do, but I did not like or love the culture I was working in. And I didn't know how to separate that. And I was putting in 50, 60 hours a week because I was so dedicated, but I didn't understand why I was losing the energy, almost like you're talking about, why I wasn't feeling as happy anymore. And when people would ask me certain things or would even comment and say, oh, I like your sweater, I like your hair, I always took it as a negative. Oh, this old thing. And I couldn't say anything positive. But my son at the time, he was about 21 at the time. He happened to be driving me back and forth to work because I had had surgery and I couldn't drive. And on the way to work one morning, he said, why are you depressed? And
wow, he noticed.
He noticed, but he has experienced depression. Okay. And
Mhm.
he could see it in me. And I said, I'm not. And I sat there crying.
Yeah.
And he goes, yes, you are. And he said, and you've got to do something about it. And I looked at him and I said, why? You know, and he goes, because I need you for a long time. And I looked over at him and my first reaction was, you're a 21-year-old, you know, and I
Yeah.
wanted to say, you don't need me. But deep in my heart, that's exactly what started to get me out of it. It was like, my 21-year-old son is talking to me and he needs me. I don't remember him telling me that when he was 10, okay, but at 21, and it was like, I've got to get better.
Yeah.
And so for our listeners, it doesn't happen overnight, obviously, because you said
No.
you've been working on this for 24 years.
Yeah.
Do you ever wake up in the morning and go, oh, I think I'm going backwards?
Oh, yes. I can't lie, and I can't say that it's always moving forward, but it's a little bit like a curve, you know.
Yep.
It's a steady curve that goes a little bit up and a little bit down, up, down, and then you go major up and a little bit down, and but you slowly is inclining upwards in some way. But I also thought about the question yesterday, because I thought that, how do I know that this is worth it, all the work I have done? Because some people seems to be so clear about that, oh, it's worth it, because I feel happier, more content, or I have more peace in my mind or so. And I can still feel that I'm quite human, that it's up and downs. So I have never reached some kind of a blissful state for a long period of time. So it's more like normal. But when I was thinking about that yesterday, it came to me that I don't really know the answer until the end of my life, if it was worth it. And maybe not then either, because if I haven't tried the other way, the other journey, if I have stayed the person I was, I don't know. I haven't tried that road. So I don't really know which road is best. I could imagine that this road is better, because I generally feel more at peace with myself. But, you know, I felt like it doesn't matter, because the most important thing is that I allow my heart and my soul to guide me. And I think that my soul said something about, well, if you didn't go on this journey, if you stayed on the old road, maybe that would be a disaster. That my soul kind of knew that on a deeper level. So it kind of pushed me toward the direction to start work with myself. But I'm really interested in that you never know. If you haven't tried both roads, you don't know which one is the best until the end, the very end.
Absolutely.
But I can just follow what feels right now. And even if I'm not in a peaceful, happy state all the time, I choose to see it as like these incremental steps upward a ladder. And that feels good.
Well, in the reality of it is, so many of us believe what other people are posting on social media or writing in books or in blogs, or even coming onto a podcast saying, oh, my life is wonderful and I'm doing everything I want and I have enough food on my table and I have friends. And you sit there and you go, wow, your life is that perfect. And I realized when I started working on getting out of my depression that my life was never going to feel 100% perfect. And that was okay, because you learn from those imperfections. You learn and say, you know, like, do I want to do it this way? Or do I want to make a shift? And we are allowed to do that because we're human. We have a brain that says, that sort of warns us, this is working, this isn't, or you know what? I just need to step back and look at it all before I do anything else.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that there are more of us today between the ages of 50 and 80 who have made the choice to become coaches or go back to school and get a degree in an area where they can not only help themselves, but help each other. And that's what you're doing. You're helping yourself. And maybe this isn't the perfect path for you, but you know what? It's helping others that are listening to you.
Yeah. So I think that when you start to work on yourself or with yourself, I felt that I wanted to have a more meaningful life, a life with more meaning. So for me, my old job that was just about money or career or something, it wasn't that fulfilling for me. I needed to have something deeper, something more. So that's when I started to coach other people after a while. So I think that the journey for me is a lot about healing myself, finding more peace within myself when I can, but also to fill my life with a little bit more of meaning that's meaningful for me. And what I notice is that when you work on yourself, it can shift a lot what you think is important in life, right? Yeah. So things that was important for me many years ago, they're totally different today.
And that happens to the best of us as we age, because for whatever reason, we like different things at certain ages. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember as a young kid, if my mother made fish for dinner, I would look at her and I would cry and be like, I don't want fish. I hate it. And she'd say to me, but you've never tried it. And it was just the thought of it. Today, hey, that's one of my favorite meals. So there was a shift somewhere. I don't know what caused it, but you know what? It doesn't matter if it makes you feel good and feel right at the time.
Yeah.
But as we talk about depression, as we were talking before we came online today, with so many hours of darkness where you live in Sweden, and for those listening, you may not have realized, that Karin lives in a lot of darkness a good part of the year. It's not just in her mind, it's the reality around her. And some people would say, well, if that bothers you, why don't you just pack your bags and move someplace where it's sunnier? But
good question.
But it's not that easy, is it?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Because I think that sometimes we humans tend to complicate everything. So when I work one-on-one with my clients and I say that I give them suggestions about to do something, they always have excuses.
Right.
They can't do it because, and they have a lot of really good excuses why they can't do it. So I know that absolutely you can have blockages in your life. You can have kids, you can have a job and you can't move because you can't find another job in another country, or you can't take your children with you because they have this school. I know that. But I also notice that we kind of sometimes complicate things and stopping ourselves, even if there isn't any stops. We just kind of create them because we are fearful. So at my age right now, I'm free as a bird. I could move, but I'm still thinking about it. Why? Because I'm a little bit scared. Because I think that, okay, I have my practice here in Sweden. I do a lot of online as well through Zoom, but there are a lot of people also coming to me in real life. So what happens if I move? Am I going to lose clients? Who's going to pay the rent and everything? So, I also have fears that I still have to conquer. And sometimes you don't conquer them in, like one thing and it's done.
Right.
But you have to do it in very, very, very small steps. And I tend to think about it like this, that if you're not doing it, it's sometimes because you're not aiming low enough.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because sometimes you don't aim low enough because you think that it's not worth doing that little trivial thing. It doesn't make any difference. So if you want to be healthier, you think that, oh, it's no use to maybe walk around the block for 2 minutes, or to maybe eat one more veggie a day. So we think about those small changes as trivial. So we don't do them. Instead, we say that I want to have bigger goals, or I want to achieve more. So we kind of doing it, we aiming too high instead of aiming too low. So we're aiming so high that it will be hard for us to change, because we are habitual creatures, we have fears, there are a lot of things going on in our lives. So instead of doing it small increments every day or every week, we aim too high, and then we fell flat because we feel, okay, I couldn't do it this week. I didn't go around a block for 2 minutes. Well, now I give up.
You know, I think we can all relate to that conversation that goes on in our heads. And it's interesting that we are talking in this manner, because just yesterday, after a year-long battle with some health issues, I put on weight, but none of my doctors can understand, because I keep a log of what I eat and what I exercise. And they go like, there's no way that you put on this weight doing that. And so I decided to join Weight Watchers Points yesterday. And I decided to do it because I know there's a big community of people that do it. So I could find people that I could relate to. But it was interesting when I set up my formula that I didn't put down in 30 days, I want to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds. I put down in a year that I wanted to lose 30 pounds. That gives me a long time to lose it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it in baby steps. I'm going to make sure that I'm not creating another problem for myself. And that's what a lot of us do. We look at this picture and we go, oh, I want to drop 3 dress sizes by my reunion or the family event. And you get to that event and maybe you've dropped 5 pounds and not even a dress size. And then you figure like, you know, I'm going to look terrible. We've got to get rid of those. And it's not easy. And when you made the comment that, yes, now you're free as a bird, you could, you could take off. When you've lived somewhere the majority of your life, it's not so easy to get up. Yeah, we're free as a bird. My husband and I were semi-retired. I do this from home. It could be anywhere. I could be living in a camper and doing this. But we like that security of being here, even though I'd like to be in warmer weather with more sun.
And that is one of our main, you know, human needs. It's security,
right?
To feeling safe. So it's very important. So I'm totally clear about that. For me, why I'm not moving yet is due to I need security. And for me, the reason, or the excuse, we can call it, is that when I left my parents, I was all on my own. And my parents, they don't live today. So if something happens financially, I don't have a family. So I need to take care of myself. So I always had that a little bit of a burden that I need to take care of myself. I need to be secure because, you know, I'm the only one and everything. That's my excuse, but I'm working on it. And like you said, I've become extremely aware of that. It's really, really baby steps doing it. So what I have done is that instead of just saying, okay, I pack everything and I move, I started to plan a little bit like, okay, can I take more clients through Zoom instead of at my office? And actually the Corona helped me,
Sure.
because suddenly people didn't want to meet. So I could start to have them on Zoom more often. And when they noticed that it worked, so my client said, "Oh, this works really fine. It's the same result." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I told you." And now and now you're forced to try it, and you notice that it works. You can do it again. That's one thing. The other thing I started is to see, can I do some groups online so I can be anywhere? And then my next step is going to be, can I, maybe be in a sunnier country from October, November to January, February, 4 months or so, start trying there. So all these small steps is moving me towards living a little bit in a sunnier country so I can have more sun and more light.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And, Zoom has helped us quite a bit. It's taken people who were totally afraid of technology to experimenting with it. And like you said, because we can do these virtual conversations, number one, you can be anywhere and your client can be anywhere. And screen time is great. And I know being in the same room sometimes can be more helpful, but it's not always possible. So we've got to go with these detours in life and say, but how does it work for me? And I know that's a big question that, coaches, will bring out. How is it working for you? How do you feel? Where do you feel? And I know when I first started my podcast business, I was doing it all audio. I didn't feel like, well, I still wanted to be in my pajamas and my fuzzy slippers when I was working. And then I started, but then I started to realize, you know what? I wanted to feel more professional, and I wasn't professional sitting in my studio like that. And so even though nobody could see me, I started dressing up for the day. And then I started using, all different methods to do these podcasts. And now what I really, really love is that I'm reaching out across the world to Karin in Sweden, where it's about 5:30 in the evening, and we're still having this conversation. Whereas years ago, it might have been a very expensive long distance phone call that probably neither one of us could afford. So I encourage everybody to dig deep, find out what makes you happy. And you don't have to be happy 100% of the time, because then I'm not even sure then you're really happy if you're feeling the same way 100% of the time.
No, life goes up and down, so you will probably feel a lot of different emotions. But there is one trick or advice that I think is really, really good here. It is that we are wired, neurological, that in order for us to feel positive emotions, we need to have an aim. And we need to see some kind of progress or movement towards that aim. So what researchers have noticed is that it's not the aim or the goal itself that makes us happy to reach it, but it's the movement towards it. So because often when we reach our goal, we are very happy for a day or a week or so, and then it fades off and we start a new thing, right?
Right.
We're starting a new journey. So if we instead say that, okay, the most important, if now going to lose weight, is not the goal weight, but to have a goal or an aim and to feeling the pleasure of moving forward.
Absolutely.
Feeling inspired, that you see that something happening on the scale, on the clothes, on the body, on the energy. That was really is creating positive emotions. So it's not all about reaching the end aim or the end goal. It's more about the moving forward. And that we can all do, because sometimes people tell me that it's hard to reach our goals because it can be very hard or be very big goals. But if you can find that you have an aim and just enjoy the movement, because that is actually what creates pleasure in the brain. And that movement is enough for you to feel pleasure, feel happy, feel good about yourself. So then you can take your eyes off a little bit of the end goal that could be a little bit stressing sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that, theory that, I bring it back to, and you probably can relate to this being in TV and producing. My brother is a music producer, and he's won a number of Grammys, and as a family we get all excited. Oh wow, another Grammy and he'd say, I love my awards, but it's not about the award. It was about the work that I produced, and the work that I produced, people are still listening to. And I remember my mother, when she was alive, it was all about that statue. And he just kept saying to her, Mom, it's not. You have to understand, because now I got to take the next steps to do something else. So let's all take those baby steps. But in the meantime, Karin, if our listeners want to find you, how can they find you? Because you're a great coach.
Okay, yes, they can easily find me on my website. So it's www.Karin, my name, Tyden.com. And hopefully you have it somewhere, so it's easy for them to find. And there they can also find, I released my book, Mind Hacking for Rebels, in October last year. And last week it won the Independent Press Award in the US.
Wonderful. Hey,
so they can find the book there as well. So if they feel that they want to book a session, they can do that easily. If they feel like, no, I just want to read a book and see what it's all about and get some great mind hacks, how to start to change your mindset, you can buy the book.
Wonderful. And we will put all that in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're saying, hey, I missed it, you can either rewind this or go read the show notes and contact Karin. And let's make a new friend on the other side of the world, and let's bring her some sunshine. I love it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so very much. And for all of you listening, again, the music at the beginning of this podcast, I Wish You Enough by Jeff Brisbane, and we will have that link in the show notes as well. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.